Our approach, we're looking at doing class activities that are student-centered, or what you'd refer to as student-centered learning. And what we do here concerning the entrepreneurial and innovative mindset is to teach this across the various disciplines. I think at the beginning, my colleague Tom, they kind of showed you the various BGP attributes that we're looking at Botho University, and the ones that we are focused on concerning basically based on our project here, we focus on articulation, collaboration, critical thinking, and of course, one that we are diving deep into right now, which is the entrepreneurial and innovative mindset. So now when we dive into this, our focus is not just on the students studying business or in the faculty of business and accounting. We are looking at the different faculties. We're looking at engineering students, computing students, and education students, just the various faculty that we have within the university here. So we actually challenging each other or one another to implement this, to practice this with the students within our own area of specialization. But then what is this thing about? We're talking about developing people who are capable of solving problems innovatively. That is what this is about. And then, of course, another thing that I would like to bring up as well is when we're talking about this entrepreneurial and innovative mindset, we are not trying to get people to start a business, but we want them to have the mindset with which they can start a business. And then, of course, going beyond business as well, and where they can apply themselves entrepreneurially and innovatively, whether it's a community service activity, whether they are in parliament, whether they, just really across anything, or whether even if they are to go on and become an employee, this is the mindset that we want the student to develop. So I think it's quite important that we set this this background and of course the context, so you understand where we're coming from when we say innovative and entrepreneurial mindset. What is it that we are developing within the student? Because as far as the teaching them now how to go on and start a business, we have modules for that. We have one in particular that I teach. It's called Essentials of Entrepreneurship. That's where now we get into the do's and don'ts of entrepreneurship. But in this case here, we're talking about what? Developing a mindset. And so while we thinking about that as well, or while we thought about that, because we started this, I think, back in 2019, and while we were into it, we were like, okay, what instructional tools and teaching approaches do we think would be adequate to help our students become what? Entrepreneurial and innovative? Quite an important question. Wasn't easy to answer though. We had to dig around because I think there wasn't readily available literature, that pinpoints directly to this very mindset that we wanted to develop. So we had to creatively look at what other people are talking concerning other fields or maybe other initiatives that they are engaged in, and used what they have to bring in to our arsenal of tools that we're going to use to build an entrepreneurial and innovative mindset among our students. So in following answering that question, we came up with a BGP toolkit. And I know Tom talked about it briefly when he introduced the session, that we have a toolkit. And this toolkit, of course, looks into, there's a toolkit for the articulation portion. There's a toolkit for critical thinking. There's a toolkit for collaboration, and then of course a toolkit for innovative and entrepreneurial mindset. And I think this is the one that I'm just going to show you in detail here to, so you can appreciate what it is that we have put together. So this is our toolkit here. I hope it's visible that side. I can zoom in maybe one more. I don't know if I'll be able to. Okay, yeah, I think this is much better. Okay, so we went on to create toolkits. And of course, why toolkits? Maybe before I delve deep into it, why the toolkits? Because I mean, we wanted to give our lecturers sort of tools available, readily available tools for them that they can use for any given attribute that they want to develop. And in particular here, this innovative and entrepreneurial mindset. Because how do you get somebody who's an English teacher and say, you know what, I would like you to build this entrepreneurial, innovative mindset among your students. Where do they start? How do they begin doing this? So then we thought, well, collectively, as we were thinking, as we were, working on this as a committee, we're like, okay, let's create the toolkits. And therefore, we created toolkits to enable or to give, or of course, as tools for our lecturers to use as they get into their classrooms. And so here, one in particular is the innovative and entrepreneurial toolkit. And you'd see the title there. So you would get into a toolkit that we share via Google Docs so that all our lecturers have access to it. And then, of course, this is the heading that you'd see there, and student engagement techniques and activities, which we have, abbreviated to, and we call them SETAs. Okay, so here I have an example of a SETA number 1, which is based on principles of effectuation, and the activity is called bird in hand. You know, the saying, bird in hand is better than two that are in the bush. So this is a mindset thing where we're teaching students to learn to work with what they have instead of waiting. You know how people often say, oh, well, I'm waiting for a funder to come through, or I'm waiting for government to do this and that, or I'm waiting for somebody to help me. No, we say, no, guys, entrepreneurs, this is how they think. They look at what they have and they use what they have in hand to achieve that which they need to achieve. They may start small, but still where they are with what they are doing, eventually at some point in time, it will lead them to what? To where they want to get to. So this is kind of what we teach there. So, just kind of explaining the bird in hand to you there. So, and then, it goes on to say there within the toolkit, the BGP attribute that it develops. And then it explains to the lecturer there that the bird in hand activity develops an entrepreneurial mindset to use what available resources to the students. So this is kind of what it explains to the lecturer there as they go through the toolkit, and then guides them as to what to do to prepare. Okay, and then these are the instructions. Okay, the lecturer is to prepare several scenarios. So it goes into a little bit of those details to help the lecturer know what to prepare for this class. So you can kind of see that the lecturer is not thrown into the deep end, but they're given something that they can use, but not to use rigidly. It's up to them to be creative. This is an art. Okay, so to play around with it and see what it is that they can do with it. But of course, they are given the foundation here. And then, of course, then there's a step-by-step guide into the bird in hand activity. Okay, that it goes on there to explain, first of all, of course, giving the general definition of what this activity is all about, the duration of the activity, and then, of course, then what is it that the facilitator, ought to begin the session, and then, of course, then going straight into the exercise itself. There's a sample exercise there, topic 1, and this, see, there would be different topics. I bet somebody in engineering may be talking about what engineers talk about. Somebody in English may be talking about something that they, some topic that they know would help the students, develop their writing skills. But in this case here, we have a topic here, raise money for your local, orphanage as a topic. How do you go on and do that? And then of course, participants and, states who the participants are, they are the students. And then the goal to the goal of this session, okay, which is to learn to use what they have to solve problems. So this is what the lecturer has, with them. And then of course, then we get into the activity itself there, okay? So, the students should answer the following questions as a way to evaluate their means. And these questions are like, who am I? What I know, what is it that I know? Who do I know? And what is it that I have? Okay, so we get students then to look at what they have within their means, and and of course by using these questions that are provided here to evaluate that, then to know how then they can go on about to raise money for the orphanage in their community. And then of course we provide a beware there, okay, what the lecturer ought to be aware of when they run this activity, and then of course the suggested assessment and feedback for this for this activity. So this was just one small sample of the activities that we have here in the innovative and entrepreneurial mindset. But there are actually 10 in total that we have developed thus far, and that we have actually even we have held workshops on this as well. We are for our lecturers. We do this, I think, every semester. We do a workshop on one activity, and these this is basically what we have developed so far. We have what is called the World Cafe there, which we're gonna sample to you just this afternoon, and then we have principles of effectuation, and which is kind of the umbrella thought there. I'm going to talk briefly about it later on. Let me not talk about it here. But then there are activities there: the Bird in Hand, Affordable Laws, Crazy Quilt, Lemonade, Pilot on the Plane. And then, of course, they go beyond that, go to look across alternative industries. This, which is what I want to point out to you is that these first few activities here were kind of focused on developing an entrepreneurial mindset. But then these other ones here, they are more towards innovation. How do you approach innovation? So these are the activities that we have here. They're kind of like, there are 10 in total there. And this is kind of what we use. We have some reference as well, where the lecturer wants to read further on the activities that we have come up with there, so they can go on and dive in deep there, and possibly even do some research and develop this further. Okay, so but this is the sample of what I wanted to show you concerning the BGP toolkit for the innovative and entrepreneurial mindset. So let's get to the fun element here, getting to do this together in class. Okay, so there. Hey, so I've just showcased the BGP toolkit there, and then, Ben, how do we measure success of this work that we do? By engaging students. I think the simplest one is just being in class, implementing this activity, and seeing what is it that students come up with from this activity. That is just a quick measure there. It tells you whether you're achieving what you want to achieve for a given class or not. Okay, so that, and then of course, as Tom had said earlier, we have an ongoing research component as well that I know Professor Evans and Eloise Mhundo, I'm going to be talking about, I think, tomorrow. Okay, so that is that. So now on the mindset, really continue to set up the context for ourselves here. Arash Asli says, who's the co-founder of and CEO of Yokel.com, says, entrepreneurial mindset is about a particular way of thinking to approach challenges and mistakes. See, it doesn't just go on to say, you know what, it's learning, you know, it's solving problems. No, a particular way of thinking to go on about what? To solve problems and mistakes. Because here is our, you know, what we've grown to understand. There is a difference between, you know, having tools. See, we can equip, we do, as I said earlier, that we equip students with tools to engage in entrepreneurship activity in our modules, in our essentials of entrepreneurship module. So these are the tools. But then there is a difference between possessing those tools and effectively using those tools. And that's why we recognize that, you know what, they ought to have that entrepreneurial mindset to what? To be able to use what they have at hand. Further on the context here, there was a study done by, a research done by Professor Carol Dweck and team. They were looking at the behavior of students when given with the harsh reality of academics, but then when they were, when they failed and they were empowered by saying, you know what, you're not yet there. If you put in much effort into what you're doing, you can get somewhere. So this really became one of our important contexts there to see the power of not yet versus the tyranny of now. Something where. So this is really part of what goes into our context there, to change the meaning of effort and difficulty to not yet. We all know from our schooling days how difficulty for most people, basically became doom. That, okay, this is it for me. But what was drawn out of this studies, those kids who were told that, put in some more effort. Okay, you got it wrong, fine, not yet, but you can still get there. There was improvement seen within what they were within their work. So this is basically really what has become one of the important a context for which we are building on. And then, of course, lastly, there on effectuation to cause or bring about something. This is still yet another thing that we're looking at on helping the students to bring, actually to develop this entrepreneurial mindset, which is something, it's a concept that was promoted by Professor Sarasvati in her book, Effectuation, which talks about principles of entrepreneurial expertise. And this, which then he went on to, which are, listed there: the bird in hand, affordable laws, crazy quilt, lemonade, pilot, and the plane. These are activities that I kind of showed you a list of them and their explanations. I know we just went through them in the toolkit that I showed you. But then this as well, which they had developed out of their research, or promoted out of the research that they had conducted, I think, among some Fortune 500 organizations. I don't know how many of them they had done, but then they kind of saw that, the world's leading entrepreneurs, this is how they think, this is how they approach the entrepreneurship process. And then we thought, wow, and we looked at this, we're like, okay, this is brilliant, this is beautiful, but how do you teach this? How do you teach this sort of thing? Okay, and that is that. Of course, one more on our context there: innovation. What is innovation? I think it was quite important that we, that it is defined. And the word, it comes from the Latin verb innovare, okay, which means to renew, and of course, it still remains. It still retains the same definition to date. It means improving and replacing something. And that can be either a process, a product, or a service. And that as well, we have some activities for that, but of course, we're not gonna do this one activity today for the sake of time. But of course, in future, should you develop some interest to see how this whole thing works, then we would really, be, willing or excited to share it with you. Okay. So on the pedagogical approaches here, now getting to the activity that we have planned for you here, just to give you a taste of what is it that we're doing. We have one here that is particularly for an entrepreneurial mindset, which is called the World Cafe. Okay, it's an activity that is useful for initiating conversations in a cafe format. Okay, people, like how people go to a restaurant, when you are in a restaurant, you're having coffee there, and conversations kind of spark up from that. And yeah, so we're using that as well, this activity to spark conversation, to engage in conversation, to get students to solve a problem at hand. And so this is what my colleague, Dr. Golden Chikari, is going to be handling on the floor there. And he will just give you the instruction as to what's going to go on with the activity. Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Chikari. Well, this is the contribution that was, I hope you guys can see that side, the projection that side. But this is what the online participants had contributed to. What opportunities does the Africa Free Trade Agreement present for youth employment? They say youth can sell their goods across borders and collaborate with partners from other countries. Definitely. And then number 2, how can technology be exploited for youth employment in Africa? Like virtual internships help become part of global workforce and remove geographical barriers. Online, world opens a whole new market for local businesses and youth entrepreneurs. Technology can help make the shift to a knowledge economy. Community solutions can be paired with tech, such as local services available via an app. And then to question 3, where should we create opportunities for youth employment? And then the answer is services industry. Africa needs to diversify. And then the next one was agriculture and in services for local communities. So these are the contributions that the online participants made. Over to you, Dr. Chikari. And yeah.
Students learn better from fellow students than from you. Do you know that? Yes, so they were among themselves arguing those points, putting them down. Some are saying this is rubbish. It's okay. That is how students learn. So we are not changing what you're teaching. We are changing how you teach it, and we have packaged that in a toolkit. We have so many of these things. So when you go to class, you might just look at one toolkit and think, oh, how can I adapt this to my engineering class today? It works so well. Now, give me feedback. What else do you think? Yes, go ahead. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Mine is more of a towards the 2K thing. So, over my period of working in the development space, I have used toolkits in actually facilitating sessions at the community level for adolescents, men and boys engagement, and also for parenting sessions, to drive home the ideas of gender, adolescent sexual reproductive health and rights and other things. I have never really imagined it through the spectrum of teaching it in the classroom or making it more practical, but I've done it more in the field. So I think with the usage of the toolkit, it makes everything more practical. It sends me back to my community work experience, and I think it's great. So if the toolkit could be more practicalized for the audience here, because for my community work, I have a toolkit guide, a toolkit book with pictures and illustrations to help my community focal persons understand what it is they're supposed to do when I'm learning. So I think with this model, we need to develop a toolkit content which has pictures, which has things to depict how co-facilitators like us could go along with it and use it. Then that way they can better incorporate it into their teaching.
Understood. And I want you to also realize that these are just toolkits that we are focusing on entrepreneurship and innovation. We have a set of toolkits, for example, for critical thinking. Those are very difficult. We have a set of toolkits for communication. We have a set of toolkits for collaboration. So when you put that together, it's a huge resource that our lecturers have to go and actually implement in class. And we are not being, we can share these things with you. Please contact us and we start working together and sharing some of them, and we can even improve them as a team. You might just find something that can work. So please, yes, go ahead, Alice.
It's also important to understand that we don't prescribe these toolkits to our teachers. They are, we say these are teaching aids. They can help you accelerate your adaptation to student-centered learning. We are not saying if you use this, you must do it this way. Everybody is free to change whatever they want to do. And as a matter of fact, a lot of staff members provide toolkits. They take the World Cafe and they take a strategy from another toolkit or another specific component, and they combine them to come up with something completely new.
Yeah.
And they actually find that it's actually very engaging for both the staff and the students. Not only that, but you were actually very good at simulating student experience. You came in, some of you were not interested in getting into groups.
I did not have
Just before you knew it, you actually started to get into it.
And you didn't want to leave
trying to change groups, you didn't want to listen. And that's the whole thing about the toolkit. The toolkit is not saying forget how to be a lecturer, forget how you need to keep time, make sure your students follow what they're supposed to follow. And ultimately, some of you might actually think this toolkit was more about collaboration than innovation. And that might depend on your opinion about what has been written there. Because there is one thing we just don't have enough time to focus on everything. But how many of you think there's a point written on a paper that you disagree with? There might be one or two things.
Oh, I've pointed it out to you.
You see that? And that's really important because you know what? What if it's something that is actually there that he can't see, and when people explain to him, it opens up his mind a bit more, and maybe he's a bit more open to new ideas, which is a critical component of critical thinking, am I right? Openness to innovation, openness to new things, particularly if it's got to do with technology. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for participating. I'm told now the focus are now beyond red. I don't know what I do. Okay, can you kindly share what you said so that I'm saying what you have, you can share. No. What you were saying about the community. Tools, yes. Can you share with us, please?
Initially, I managed the project that seeks to use that.
I am saying, will you share us that material?
After
the session, yeah. Can you actually share with us? We want to create a continuous improvement. We may pick one or two things from that source, yeah.
But I do think one very important point that she said, which never occurred to us, is the idea that perhaps to Travis, but language barrier also is to have a pictorial set as to what you're doing. And make these easily adaptable for people in different languages and different contexts. And that will allow everybody to quickly adapt a toolkit to their context. You must understand, we know that from one country to another, a lot of things will change. There will be some countries where groups can't be mixed together, we know that. What we're saying is within your context, if you're interested, this is a strategy.
All right. I think really sorry. I think everybody now is waiting for us. Okay. So we have to finish. Guys, enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Hello, Tom.
We didn't agree to something.
Hello,
We didn't
Tom.
agree to something else. What point was that?
He said the educational system in Africa is strong. I said, no, I don't.
They have the educational system is not low. The way we
long, long.
it's not long. Yes. It's like, the way you take it differs. But the ability to gain something in the given context may differ from others. It might look long for you, but how we train our people, they have shortened it. Yeah, it's 6. Now what is that? 366, right? Like total of 15 years. Used to be longer.
Longer. I was part of that system.
Hello, Tom.
Something, yes.
You grind and grind and grind.
Tom.
Nowadays they fast track you.
Yes. Then taking this one, I say 15 long.